Hey there, audio friends. Welcome back to the channel. Got a really cool device for you today. We're looking at the Fiio K17, and just look at this thing. It is a beast. And, this was sent to me by Apos, just so you know. I don't get to keep it, but I've had it for a couple of months. Didn't honestly get to listen to it as much as I wanted to, but my time that I did get to spend with it, I came away really impressed. And I knew right from the get-go, the first thing I wrote about it was that I'm gonna be biased about the sound, I think, because I just love the hardware so much. This thing is just like the ultimate desktop listening box. And I really, just really like the build of this thing. We'll dive into it here. Of course, we'll get to sound. We'll talk about some pairings with some super high-end headphones and see what we think. Ultimately, does the sound match up with the build? That was kind of my question going in. And so let's dig into it, all right? Okay, so this thing is big. This is a big device, right? And it's heavy. It feels like a proper piece of audio equipment, right? This doesn't feel like some cheap little box that is empty on the inside. It's packed. Like, you can tell this thing is packed full. Around the front here, oh, check this out. One of the things I appreciated about it, update is easy. This thing connects to Wi-Fi. I'm just gonna click update right now and we'll just do it as we're going. I have it turned on just so we can kind of look at a couple of things here, but update's easy. Once you get this device hooked up and everything set, it all just works fantastically. But as it's updating, let's look at some of the stuff that's going on here, okay? You got everything is a physical knob. Like, I love that, right? Like, you're flipping switches, very cool. So you got power here. You got kind of your outputs, like what are you setting things to? Are you going headphone and pre-out? Are you going headphone only? Are you going pre-out only? What are you just going line out? Like, what are you doing? Okay. Gain settings, another knob. You got a USB in on the front, which is cool, I guess. You've got a couple of dials here. One's for menu navigation, one's for volume. Those are infinite scroll dials and push buttons, but they feel good. They feel fine. Obviously, you can see a little bit of RGB action going on there. You've got, on the front, you got connections that you would probably expect. You got 1/4 inch, you've got 4.4, and you've got the 4-pin balanced setup. You can see as I move this around, it's got ventilation everywhere, right? Vents, 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 because this thing's packing a lot of power, right? It's got a lot. We'll get into specs here in a minute, but let's look at the back here, because you can see there's a lot going on, a lot worth looking into here. You got optical in, optical out. You've got coax in, coax out. You've got some ground stuff in there. You've got a 4.4 in. You've got RCA in, RCA out. You got a spot for a remote trigger to come in. RS232, whatever that is. You got another USB-C in. You got a USB, what is that? USB-A in, I think. You've got wired LAN input here, because this thing will stream too, okay? And then you got balanced input out, and then of course you got your little power thing there, and it's Bluetooth and all that stuff too, okay? So this thing can do a lot. It can do a ton. So real quick here, let's look at, you've got a little remote that comes with it as well. It's fine. It's a little remote. It does what it needs to do. I didn't find it to be, I honestly didn't use it that much. I like interacting with the device so much. I don't usually use remotes with something sitting on my desk, but it's there if you need it. Or if you wanted to hook this up, to like a home theater setup or something like that, it absolutely could work for that, right? Because it does all the streaming and all that stuff there. So in the time I was talking there, it just did its update, right? And when I got it, I had to update it, but the updates are quick. It works seamlessly, no problem there. One thing that I just love is like this display, this orange display. I really like, it's like clean retro vibe. I just really like it, okay? And you can see how I can like scroll through the menu here. All that just works so well. The thing that threw me though is I was like, how do I get in? There were like some settings that I wanted to change when I got it, and I was like, how the hell do I get into these settings? Because there's no way, like, you click the menu button, it just goes to that. You click the volume, it like shuts the screen off. You hit the menu button, you know, the mode button and stuff on here. It just goes through there. I was like, how the heck do I get to those deeper settings that I want to mess with? Well, this is a touchscreen. It's a little touchscreen that I like. All you got to do is swipe right and you're into the menu there. And it's super easy to navigate, but it took me forever to figure that out. Like, I was probably fiddling with this thing for like half an hour down here. Like, how the hell do I get to these settings? But once you're in there, then you got access to anything you want. That's where you can do the Wi-Fi, the idle time, equalizer. You can get all your streaming stuff set up, you know, your network settings, you know, just any possible setting that you would want, you can go through in here and tweak, including like what the display looks like, you know, what the RGBs do, you know, all of that stuff is all accessible in that menu. Once you can figure out, if you just swipe right, it'll work. So yeah, phenomenal device. I have absolutely no complaints about the hardware other than I wish it just would have been documented somewhere to make it simpler of just like, oh yeah, just it's a touch screen, swipe right and you get into your menus. I was searching the internet to find that. I don't know, maybe I'm just a bit slow, but but eventually we got there. Okay, let's talk about some specs quick and then we'll get into sound stuff. Okay, so as you can imagine, this is a like flagship top of the line product. It says it's got a combination AK4191 plus AK4499EX DAC chips in here. None of that makes much difference to me, but I think you just need to know that it's their flagship DAC. It goes on here to talk about some premium components, things like that. Class A, B, transistor amplification head, you know, configuration. It talks about some specific, you know, transistors that I assume are high-end stuff. 4 watts in each channel is what's coming out of this thing balanced. So just tons of power, and you really notice it when you're listening. Talks about, again, a power supply, super low noise, you know, special components, et cetera, stuff that's way over my head. Same thing with like the EQ system. It talks about a special EQ system where, you know, you're getting still like perfect audio even if you mess with the EQ and stuff like that. I'm not a big EQ person, but what's in here seemed to be, you know, easy to navigate, and I never found it negatively impacting the sound when I tried it out. Again, it's got crystal oscillators, you know, all that stuff. To me, ultimately, like a lot of these things don't mean much to me as long as it like functions well and it doesn't like encumber me when I'm using the device. And I think you can just rest easy knowing that there's a lot of great technology and components packed into this thing. And thankfully, when you listen to it, that's what it sounds like. Okay, so let's get into our sound impressions here. Now, the 2 main headphones that I used when analyzing this device, which I thought it needed some proper headphones, right, to do it, was the HE1000. This is the SE version, okay? And then I've got the Headphone 2 GT, all right? This is the newer model of the Headphone 2, and you know, these are both, you know, couple $1,000 headphones. Paired up with, you know, this device is a $1,000 device. So I think, you know, they're in the realm of what a typical use case would be, right, as far as these go. Okay, so as a reference of comparison, I have an Element 3 as kind of like my main, you know, DAC amp here, which, you know, when it was new was like 400, maybe 450 bucks. So about half the price of this. I mean, you could get one used now for much, much cheaper, you know, a couple $100, which is what I did. But I think that's a good comparison because like the question in my mind, right, was like, would it be worth it to get something like this? Would it improve my overall listening experience and enjoyment of a nice set of headphones if I upgraded to something like this? And I imagine that's what a lot of you would be wondering as well. And I think, you know, it all comes down to headphone pairings, of course, as well. But I think it's very safe to say that technically the K17 offers a very high level, you know, digital to analog conversion experience and a very high level headphone amplification experience. Whether it matches perfectly with your headphones is going to be a little bit different story. But let's just talk my impressions with the Headphone 2 GT here first. as soon as I started listening, I thought, holy cow, this thing is super clean. Like, it just sounded like nothing was out of place. The background is like black. And when I say black, I mean it is like there is zero noise. So maybe all those crystal oscillators and things like that, they must be doing something. High-end power supply, all that. Like, whatever they've done, it was like, I said, like special black is what the background sounded like. It is so clean, it was impressive. And that's not something I would normally comment on that much. And I just put like, you know, when you're listening to it, it felt next level coming from the Element 3. Like it just, the whole package, the power and precision in which the music was presented on the HEDDphone 2 GT, it was just, it was a sit down. I wrote like, this combination. I was like, this is just like a sit down and like pay attention to what you're listening to combination. Like you could just so pick out and feel like the songs. It's really hard to describe when you get into kind of like that perfect listening zone, but I felt like I was there and I was just so into it. And that was something that I didn't feel like I had experienced, you know, in quite a while. I put, you know, it sounds like it looks like robust, strong, powerful, refined, well done, like, you know, precision. Like it all just, it feels that way when you're listening to it as well. I thought the separation was like next level in that it was all still sounded very cohesive, but at the same time, everything had its own distinct, you know, place in the mix, and I could very easily focus in on all those different little details. A couple of songs that I just highlighted as I was listening to was Gin and Juice by The Gourds. I used to think it was Fish, but I don't know. But, you know, it's kind of like that folky country take on Snoop's Gin and Juice, which is just a wonderful song. But I just was listening, I was like, there's just nothing out of place here. Like, it sounds perfect. Like, I couldn't find any fault as I was listening to it. Like, it was just fantastic, like the best version of that song I'd ever heard. Lumineers, Gloria, I put that there was just like a really fantastic presentation of the harmony, and there were like some background vocals there that I felt like I could easily isolate with that combination that I had never really picked out before. And that's a song that I've heard hundreds of times, I'm sure. And then ultimately, after listening, you know, for a good long while, I just put like, this is enough, right? Like, I feel like this is an end game device, and that headphone, I mean, it'll have its own review. That's an end game headphone too. And I just feel like listening to it, like, what else could you nitpick? What else could you want? You know, what I couldn't see anybody like listening to that and being like, oh, this isn't quite right, or I need to have more of this, or I need to have more. Like, no, it is enough. And like, what a great place, you know, in a world, in a hobby that's so consumer driven with the next best thing and stuff like that. If you get your hands on a combination and device where you just feel like, wow, I'm just happy listening to this. It is enough for me. Like, that's saying something. And it, you know, it brought me to a place where I was, after not having a lot of time to really sit down and listen, you know, and being overwhelmed with like a lot that's going on in my life, I just haven't felt like I've really gotten to a good place of like just enjoying sitting down and listening to music. I always feel like I need to be doing something else, or I'm too busy to do it, or just there's other things that are taking priority. This combination of the K17 and the HEDDphone GT2, the HEDDphone 2 GT, it got me to that place again where I was like, hey, I want to go listen to that song. I want to go listen to that song. You know what I mean? And I was just, I was back into it, you know? I was back into listening, and I was really trying. So that's why it's just special. It's special. This is a special device. That's a special headphone. And I think, you know, it really brought me to realize that I need to devote some more time to this. And it's worth sitting down and really listening to some good equipment, you know? Now, I would say that the HE1000 didn't pair quite as well with the K17. Matter of fact, I preferred it with the Element 3. And why is that? Honestly, I feel like the HE1000 is a little more forward of a headphone, and I feel like it just, like it has like a sizzle and kind of a presence on the Element 3 that just the well-rounded precision of the K17 made it feel like a little bit duller than what I'm used to listening to it at. And so that's where I was saying earlier, you know, I still think that it matters, like pairings and things like that. But that's not to say that if I didn't sit here and play with like the EQ on the K17, I couldn't dial it in for that headphone, because I absolutely think I could. But honestly, I was just at a place where I was enjoying listening so much with, you know, with the Headphone 2 GT in this, that I just didn't want to bother with it. And then of course, you know, different tracks, right? Like it depending on what type of a music you're listening to and how that album was recorded and things like that. Like there are just, music isn't as simple as saying like, I've got this one device and this one headphone and it's going to be a perfect match for everything. It's just, it's not that simple. But again, I think it comes back to the idea that this is absolutely enough, that it does so much right. You're never going to need more power than this. You're gonna be able to fine tune it, you know, as far as like your streaming services and things like that. You're gonna be able to dial in whatever you want with those. You're gonna be able to use whatever connections you want with it. You're gonna be able to do whatever outputs and inputs you want with it. I think it's just a great device. It's a great device. It's expensive. I realize, you know, $1,000 is not cheap, but I think again, you can rest assured that what you are getting here is very much worth that. And I think, again, you're getting a very good taste of what super high-end audio is like. And under $1,000, I think it's a bargain, honestly, especially when you consider you could drop $1,000 on a DAC and $1,000 for an amp and things like that. Like, I don't know, you got one box here, it looks great, it feels great, it's great to interact with, and it sounds fantastic. I don't know. It's an amazing device. I wholeheartedly recommend it. Thanks to Apos for sending it out. Appreciate you guys watching. If you're in the market for something like this and you got the cash, it's worth a look. That's for darn sure. Okay, thanks. Hope that was helpful. You know, hopefully I'll see you in the next one.